All right, good morning. Hoping you all can still hear us, that's working. If you can't hear, um, you're lucky, I guess. And we'll record this and hopefully you can hear later. Um, we have quite a few things to cover for you this morning, like normal. It's our, I don't know if I'd say favorite time of the year, but it's budget season officially, I think now. And so we're gonna go through that stuff. We have Jeff Schreier here from the auditor's office, gonna go through the budget document for you, and then Michelle Cartwright, Stephanie DeGroat, and Kelsey Larson from the school finance team joining myself, Bryce Wilson, the finance officer for the department. I'll be wrapping us up with going over some legislative changes. Also, some information on the school tax credit, I think is going to be real helpful for a lot of you at the end. Kind of what we're seeing and learning with that as that process changes. So we got a lot of different things in store for you today. We are recording this. Also, if you have not muted yourself, please do that. Make sure that yours is muted. If you have questions as we go throughout this webinar, please type those in the chat. When we get done, we'll also have an opportunity at the end to just kind of answer some general questions, and we can unmute people at that point and let you ask your question if it's easier than typing it in the chat box. So that's kind of what we're planning to do for today. All right.
All right, I think means I'm up here. So good news from I guess our office's perspective is we really don't have any major changes to the budget forms that the state auditor's office prescribed. So that's I think a good news for everybody. And then just kind of to start off with your reminder that kind of the end date of this whole process is September 30th, when the adopted budgets need to be sent into the state auditor, to education, and to the counties. Can go to next slide. So this one here, county and municipalities, I know this doesn't impact you guys directly at the school districts, but kind of just a kind of current event type thing that some of your counterparts at the counties and the cities and villages do have some pretty substantial changes this year to their budget process. So just thought I would touch on those briefly. So basically kind of the schools a couple years ago, you guys now have this concept of property tax request authority. A similar thing was passed this last year through the legislature for our counties and our cities and villages. So those entities are now under a new property tax cap, I guess people are calling it, that limits how much the counties, cities, and villages can request in property taxes. They were under a similar limit before, kind of was always referred to as a lid on restricted funds. But that was repealed and they're under this new cap. So for our counties and our cities and villages, the maximum property taxes they can levy each year is basically reverts back to the prior year property tax request amount. And then there is allowances for growth, for inflation, and for exceptions each year. So that's kind of what's going on at the counties and cities. Obviously, again, not a direct impact to you guys, but that's kind of the big thing this year for the other governments. Other thing, just thought I'd mention quickly for our community colleges, when we're talking about those pink postcards and the joint public hearings, the community college will no longer be participating in those. So most of their funding was replaced with state aid instead of property taxes. So they are no longer going to be participating or subject to those joint public hearings. Sounds like Bryce is going to talk about school property tax credit too, so I won't spend too much time on it. The thing I just wanted to mention, a lot of confusion that I've been hearing in our office is people thinking that the school property tax credit is an addition to your property tax request amount. So, and that's not true. When you do your budget and you say, I need $1 million in property taxes, and that's what we use to calculate our levy. The property tax credit is not in addition to that amount. It's just a portion of that $1 million is paid by the state through the tax credit instead of by the local taxpayer. So don't think that, you know, if you ask for $1 million in property tax credit and you're getting an extra 50,000 in tax credit, it's not both. It's not in addition to, it's just a portion of that tax request is coming in through the tax credit instead of paid by the local taxpayers. Paid out in 2 payments, so you'll see probably more money coming in January, February, and April, May timeframe. Just because that's when it's distributed by the state. So there might be some, you may have noticed this last year, some timing changes of when the cash flows come into the school district. Just kind of because of the timing of when it's paid by the state versus when it would typically be paid by the taxpayers. So that's really the main thing I wanted to touch on there. As far as budget submission, no changes here. Budget goes to county clerks, to state auditor, and to Department of Education. For our office, you can submit online through our website, auditors.nebraska.gov. That would be the preferred method. We do technically still allow hard copies through the mail. I think most school districts do the online option, which is helpful to us as well. Some common issues, just wanted to touch on. The biggest one is just not getting all of the required documentation with the budget submission. So for our office, we don't have access to the LC2 system. So that's why we asked you to print out the LC2, just so that way we can have it with our budget submission and have it included on the public budget that gets uploaded to our website. So we want to make sure that gets included. If you have any special grant funds, we would need school board minutes where you're approving the budget, or the other steps in the process. The tax request authority, I think, is a new one. Just those minutes documenting those approvals, proof of publication for your budget hearing, and then your valuation report from the county assessor. So just making sure not just the actual budget forms or budget document itself, but all of those other pieces as well. And then the other big one is making sure that our beginning balances agree to the prior year ending balances. So if we said last year we ended with $100, that's what we should be starting with the subsequent year. I know sometimes there's errors or issues that come up that there might be a legitimate reason why the balance has changed. If that's the case, just it's kind of helpful for us that you just include an explanation with your budget. Otherwise, we'll probably be asking what happened. The other thing that I'll mention here is the budget forms have a checklist tab. Stephanie and I worked on that this year to kind of make sure that was up to date and consistent between Department of Education and our office. So that's there to help you make sure that you are meeting all the requirements. You have everything submitted that you need to submit. So if you go through that checklist and can check everything off, that's more or less what our staff is doing when they review the budgets. So if you're kind of doing that initial review yourself, that will hopefully reduce the likelihood that you would hear from us during our review. The other thing I'll mention is no news is good news. So in our office, we get about 2,500 budgets. So we don't just get school districts, we get budgets from all the other local governments as well. We basically take the approach of no news is good news. So if you don't hear from us, that's a good thing. That means that everything checked out when we reviewed your budget. We would only be contacting you if there's issues. Quite frankly, just don't take the time or have the time to send everything looks good email to 2,500 local government. So no news is good news. This one comes up every year. What happens if the school board makes changes to the budget from what was originally published in that newspaper publication? And the answer to that is it's okay to make changes. They can do that. But if any of those numbers change, we need to do a second publication within 20 days after the budget is adopted. That outlines, here's what the number was in the original publication. Here's what it is in the final adopted budget, and then a short reason for the change. And as long as we get that summary of changes published within 20 days, that's all we would have to do in that situation. Budget amendments, we're coming up, getting closer to that time of the year. Just some reminders here on budget amendments. Need to make sure we're getting those done before August 31st. Filing those amendments with state auditor, Department of Education, and the county clerks. We do have examples and instructions on our website to kind of help with that process, including an example publication for your budget amendment hearing. And then once you get through that amendment process, as far as what you need to submit to our office, it would just be the pages of the budget that changed. So we don't need the entire budget document. Again, we only need pages that changed. And then minutes where the school board approved the amendment and proof of publication for the budget amendment hearing. Last thing here for me is touch on audit reports. Just again, a reminder for everybody that those are due by November 5th. Same submission process, submit online through our website, auditors.nebraska.gov. Again, is the preferred method. We do still technically accept hard copies, but we're trying to get away from that as much as possible. Then a few years ago now, just a reminder that there is a penalty for filing that audit report late, $20 per day. Could be assessed as a late fee. We typically don't like to do that. So I guess if you're running into the situation of your audit report is late, and I know it's getting harder and harder to get those done by November 5th, just keep us informed in our office, kind of what's going on. And, you know, as long as we're actively trying to get it done and responding timely to the auditor and those kind of things, historically, we have not assessed that late fee, but technically we do have that authority. That is all I have. Question?
No questions.
All right. We're gonna talk about budgets and get started on that. I'm Stephanie, for those that don't know me. And as you can tell, I love dogs. All right, so note at the bottom of the screen is our website, and you'll want to ping this on your computer so that all things budget related can be found on our website. One of the most important things that you'll want to maybe print out or save would be the budget timeline. The budget timeline, there's certain dates you have to hold your hearings by, notify the county if you're going to the joint public hearing, and various things like that. So you'll want to know that, have that budget timeline printed out. Like Jeff said, we talked about getting our checklists in order so that you can use the same checklist for their office, our office, the county. So you can find the checklist on our website, any exclusion templates that you may need to use. So just make note of where to locate our website. On the budget website, you can also find the budget text, and this is an important document. It has an explanation of budget terms, talks about each of the different funds, and gives a description so that you know what you can and can't spend using that fund. There's details about the levy, details about how your budget authority is calculated. There's additional details about how to access if you have any unused budget authority from the prior year. There's also detailed descriptions on expenditure exclusions and procedures for holding a special election. You can also find a copy of the school district budget instruction manual. This comes directly from the auditor's office. There's a link on our website or their website. But as you're going through, especially if you're first time filling out these budget documents, this would be super helpful because it's a step-by-step, in-depth instruction manual for filling out the budget forms. There's multiple tabs on that Excel spreadsheet, and some of them they flow through to other pages, so you don't want to have any manual entries. And we'll go through that in more detail in a few minutes. But this is an in-depth, regarding statute and any legislative changes. So you want to make sure that you have access to the instruction manual. All right, so part of the district budget cycle, you should be reviewing now where you stand with your current year budget. A lot of times, if something needs to be amended, it can be through the nutrition fund or the activities fund. So make sure you're reviewing your current budget. You won't get dinged for going under budget, but you would get dinged if you went over budget. So make sure that you're looking at that now and planning if anything needs to be looked at there. And if you're in doubt, call one of us. We'll be glad to look at it with you. By now, you should be having your budget workshops with your board, finding out what are their expectations for this next year. Do they have a certain amount of levy that they want you to be at? Do they want to keep it status quo, go up a penny, down a penny? What tax requests do they want to be at? So be talking to your board and getting their input about where you need to be. Make sure you are again looking at that timeline so you can be scheduling your budget hearings, and then, continue to monitor your spending throughout the year. So preparing for your district budget, there's no standard method to do this, but some things to consider when planning would be evaluate your district's needs and limitations. What are the board's goals? What projects do you have coming up? Review your prior year budget and audit trends for the last couple of years. Are you moving in a direction? Are you reaching your goals, or do we need to make some changes? What do we need to do for the next year? Also, another important thing is thinking about where do you expect to be on August 31st cash wise? Do you have enough left over on August 31st to cover the shortfall months? So we're talking about cash reserve. What does it cost to run the district for a month? Do you have enough in your account to cover 3 or 4 months? January, February, March, April, when the taxes aren't coming in? Do we need to build a cash reserve? Or do we need to build more of a cash reserve? So be thinking about some of those items. Make sure you're checking our website. You can find your certified budget authority, your property tax authority, your state aid certification. All of those can be found on our website. So make sure you're getting those printed out so that you know where your limitations are for revenue, expenditures, and whatnot when you're filling out the budget ahead of time. The board may help determine where they want the levy to be, but be thinking about what your goals are for the next year and what projects you have. Do you have a bond or a building project that needs to be accounted for in this new budget? Seek guidance from the outgoing soup, the NCSA mentor, or NDE. Some other things to consider with the general fund disbursements. Make sure you're building in a percentage for salary and benefits. You probably know what those increases are going to be by now, but make sure you're building in enough extra to account for, especially benefits. I know that I've heard from a lot of folks that those have gone up this year. So make sure you're building in enough to account for those changes. Consider the unexpected situation. What if a family moved into your district in December and you had to hire a another teacher, perhaps a special education teacher. What if you had to buy a vehicle with a wheelchair lift? Do you have funds set aside to account for this? One thing to remember is that special education is an exclusion of your budget, which Kelsey will talk to you more about shortly. But make sure you're building in for those unexpected items. Do you need any new instructional materials? What about new computers or tablets? Make sure you're thinking about some of these things before we start working on the budget. What do you need this next school year? Think about beyond just, in the office there. Think about building and grounds maintenance. Are you going to need a new mower? That could be 10 grand. Sprinkler repairs. What about our van situation? 75% of the vans in the state don't meet federal requirements. Do you need a new van? Do you need a couple of new vans? Another big item would be if you had to replace the tires on your big yellow school bus or even a motor coach bus, that could be $10,000 to $15,000. So think about some of those major expenses. Do you need a roof? Do you need HVAC? Think about that when building the budget. So just to think about where your fund revenue sources are coming from, about 52% comes from your local and county resources, which would be property taxes, motor vehicle taxes, interest, fines and licenses. Your state revenue sources would be your state aid, state grants, apportionment, sped reimbursement. 8% from this prior year, these calculations came from your 23-24 AFRs. About 8% came from the feds. So Medicaid, ESSERS, IDEA, title grants. And then the remaining 1% comes from non-revenue, such as loans or sale of property, insurance proceeds. So just to kind of give you an idea where those revenue sources are coming from. All right, your certified budget authority, you can see if you look in the budget text, there is a detailed calculation, but based on your school size, your calculation may be budget based, may be based on student growth or formula needs. You can see the calculation on your certified budget authority, and then there's details that give more of an explanation in the budget text. Your budget authority is automatically populated into the LC2 for you so that you can see as you upload your budget if you're above or below your limits. Property tax authority. Michelle worked really hard this year to create us a certified document for property tax authority. So you're of course welcome to look at that big crazy spreadsheet, but you can now find your own certified document on the website, which gives it just gives a real good explanation and detail of exactly where you need to be with property tax authority. Make sure that you understand that property tax authority applies to the general fund and the special building fund. If you need additional authority, you'll want to make sure that you're talking to your board and obtaining 70% board approval to go above and beyond that. Total allowable reserves. This is where I was talking about that it's good to have 3 to 4 months of funding in cash reserves because of the shortfall months. So this is a budgeting tool to help with your cash flow. It's not actual cash in the bank. The data is entered into the budget worksheets and it auto-populates to the LC2. In the LC2, there is a section for allowable reserves to make sure that you're within those limits. And the total cannot exceed the allowable amount that's found on your budget authority certification. It includes the general fund necessary cash reserve, the employee benefit fund necessary cash reserve, and the depreciation fund necessary cash reserve. The allowable reserve is calculated based on your district's average daily membership. So if you had 5 million, you're allowed 45% reserve, which would equal 2.250. The calculation, again, you can see, details about this in the budget text. All right, so some things to consider. Are you up against budget authority? If you are, make sure that you're accessing the special grant funds list located in the LC2 to see if there's anything that would work to help bring you back in budget there. Think about your retirement contributions, your voluntary termination, SPED is an exclusion, any short-term borrowing, early childhood. So think about your exclusions. Kelsey will go into more detail about what each of those are here shortly. But if you still exceed your certified budget authority, then you'll need to hold a public hearing and include a ballot language stating what your access is to expenditure exclusions. The amount that is approved will be for 1 fiscal year, and then it will become part of the base for next year. All right, so we're going to get into the actual budget forms now. And so the first page you'll come across is the basic data input page. Here's where you're going to enter your information from the prior year certified valuations. So you'll enter your prior year information. Here's where you'll enter the information about where you're going to hold and what time your budget hearing, special hearing information is going to be. One tip and trick I want to throw out at you is right there towards the top. It says, I believe it's row 11. It's current school district taxable value. Now, we don't get the taxable value until August 20th each year. But what you can do, what I work with a lot of my school districts on, is to build a percentage in there. You can put in a formula that is maybe 3% above the prior year or 5%. And then you can switch back and forth to find out, well, if I receive more in valuation, my levy goes down, and then I can ask potentially more in property tax authority. Or if my valuations go down, then, my levy may go up. So put in a percentage in row 11. That will help you. It'll flow through to your special hearing page so that you can kind of see how that works together to when you're calculating your levy. Is there?
It's just a comment. You're good.
Am I good? Okay. The next page is the cover page. The data flows through here from other pages. The only thing please do not note that a lot of these have formulas in them, and the data flows through from your worksheet pages. And so you don't want to override any formulas in a page like this because it will throw your calculations off. The only thing you should be typing in on the cover page is your check mark, your yes, no questions. Everything else should be flowing through from your worksheets. And so this would be more of a page that you want to verify the data is flowing through correctly, but do not override formulas. So your next set of pages would be pages 2, 3, and 4. And this is what Jeff was talking about, where your ending balance will flow through and be your next beginning balance, and so on and so forth. There should be no manual entries on pages 2, 3, or 4, because the data from these pages will flow through from your general fund appreciation and varying fund worksheets. This gives you a snapshot of your budget. One of the pages shows what occurred in the prior year that you reported on your audit. The next page shows where you currently stand year to date on your revenue and expenses. And the third page is shows the budget that you're planning for this year. So this is a snapshot of your budget. A couple things to notate. On page 2, you can see at the bottom that there is certified state aid. This is one of the items that you need to have correct. It can't be an estimate. This has to be directly from your certified state aid paperwork. So make sure that you're checking that out and entering that correctly on your general fund worksheet. This is one of the items that the APA's office will red flag if it's not correct. Another thing that they will look for is county treasurer's balance. Now, if you have a new bond or you just created a fund, you may not have a county treasurer's balance. But any existing funds should have a county treasurer's balance. So make sure you're not missing that on your general fund worksheets, because if that says 0 at the bottom, it'll be sent back to you. So make sure that you're accounting for little things like that. You know, those little details, that those are populating through on your worksheets. Your property or your PT Request Act, page 6, allowable growth percentage. This is where it determines whether you're going to go to the joint public hearing or pink postcard, as most people refer to it as. It's required if the tax asking exceeds 2% plus real growth. The joint public hearing, you will hold this with your other political subdivisions in the county. It is very specific. You need to make sure you're notifying your county assessor by September 4th is the deadline if you need to go to a joint public hearing. The joint public hearing must be held between September 14th and September 24th, and it must be held after 6 p.m. in the evening. The postcards will be sent to the property taxpayers, owners, and one thing that I would recommend is they usually have a form that you can fill out, but what you want to make sure is that ask the county if you can help proofread it before it's sent out to make sure there's no errors. Make sure that the data matches what you show from this form on their postcard that's going before it goes out to the taxpayer, so you don't get any misunderstandings there. You can see down at the bottom that it'll say the property tax request exceeds and you must go to the joint public hearing, or it will say you do not. So it'll be in bold letters there at the bottom of your page, either must or not go to that joint public hearing.
There's a question that popped in. So it's a good question. It says, how is real growth calculated? So on that form itself, when they certify valuation to you, they certify your real growth value as well. So you'll enter that in. There's a line under the real growth percentage increase that says the value of that's certified on your certification document. That's divided by the prior year's total real property to come up with the percentage that shows up on that line 3 of the budget form Stephanie's going through right there. So the form will do the calculation for you. All you have to do is enter in the value from the certification documents, and you again will have you may have multiple counties, so you got to add them all up to the total real growth value. For a lot of the school districts, it's pretty minimal, but some of the school districts that are in areas that have a lot of development going on, a lot of houses being built, or commercial real estate, manufacturing type stuff going in, you might see a significant real growth value. That definitely is significant for some districts.
One thing to note about what Bryce said, it will not be entered on this page. Those numbers will get entered on your basic data input page and flow through to this page for you. So no manual entries on this page.
Good clarification.
Let's see. Let me back up here a minute. So a couple things to note on this as well is if you do need to go to the joint public hearing, you must have one elected official present at the meeting. It excludes the bond principal and interest. That does not count in this. And it must be held prior to, so you can have your budget hearing prior to the joint public hearing, but you can't adopt your budget until you hold the joint public hearing. So it's usually better to schedule your budget hearing after the JPH meeting. Any further questions on that before we go to the next page? Okay. All right, so Schedule A on your budget form is the next page you'll come across. This is where your exclusions get entered, and Kelsey will go through this in great detail shortly. She'll have fun doing that. But if you, for example, if you fill out the budget forms, which she'll explain to you, and your retirement contribution, let's say you get a $35,000 expenditure exclusion, make sure you're entering it on this page, because whatever is listed on this page will flow through to the LC2 for you and populate that into the LC2. So make sure you're entering it not only in this form, but on the correct line. So retirement, under retirement, for example. All right, Schedule B. This is my big page, and I've got it highlighted in yellow. No manual entries on this page. This is the page that it's also a snapshot of what your levy limit and whether you're in compliance or not. This will show you where you stand on things, but this is the page that uploads to the LC2. So do not override anything in Schedule B with, the only time that something is overrided is if there is a bond evaluation, but make sure you're contacting Michelle or I to work with you on that, because we want to make sure that it's entered correctly on this form so that it uploads correctly to the LC2. So just note, number B, don't touch.
Be cautious.
Be cautious. There you go. That's perfect. All right, resolution setting the property tax request. This is a great page. If you look at it, not only does it show what your property tax request is, but it also answers certain questions, like how much per $100 of assessed value. It calculates everything here for you. Some of those questions you may have at your hearings with the public can be answered right here on this page. This is also an important page because you will have to fill this out and include it with your budget documents to both the county, the auditor's office, and our office. And then you also need to note it in your meeting minutes. So you'll fill this page out. You can, some boards opt to just type in the data of who voted and how they voted, and some actually print it out and have their board sign it. Either way is fine. Just make sure that you're getting it filled out, and then make sure that everything is noted properly in the meeting minutes to correspond with this page. All right, your budget hearing and budget summary. This is what gets posted in the newspaper. So make sure that you're verifying this, your data flows through. There's no manual entries on this page. You can see at the top, it'll note when your budget hearing is, where it's at. That flows through from your basic data input page. So when you enter it there, it'll populate in here. Make sure that's all reading correctly. This will show a snapshot of your 23-24 actual disbursements and transfers, which comes directly from your audit. It will show your current year actual estimated figures and then what you're budgeting for the next year. Now, before you send this to the paper, look at it and give it a good, make sure that there's nothing from one extreme to the other. Make sure that it looks like it's, increasing properly, flowing through properly. You wouldn't want to have, for example, you wouldn't want it to say $400 in the general fund, and then your next year you're asking 6.5 million. So make sure and just, review it to make sure everything looks correct and there's nothing on there that's going to get you a phone call in your office on. Your special hearing page. Now, you either go to the joint public hearing, or if you don't need to do that, you still have to have a special hearing. That special hearing can be held on the same night as the budget, but it has to be clearly set at 2 different times. But you can do these both, but you either have to do the special hearing or you have to go to the joint public hearing. But this is a really great page to print out for your board because it shows last year's budget and where the levy is. It shows this year's budget where the levy is. And then up at the top, it shows your property valuations from the prior year to the current year and what the percent and change is. And so this is a good snapshot of where everything stands, and it might help the board see, okay, here's where we are, here's where we're going, type of thing. But this would also get posted in the newspaper if you need to do the special hearing versus the joint public hearing. Okay, your budget fund worksheets. So this is where the main part of all of your information is going to happen. Basically, from the general fund on through to the all through the funds, everything gets entered here, and then it flows through to the first half of your budget forms. So make sure that that you're entering everything here accurately and that it's flowing through to the front pages. You'll start with column D, the first column. This is where you'll enter the information from your 2023-24 audit. And if you look about halfway through your audit to the supplementary pages, usually in the area of pages 30 to 50, then you'll find your audit data. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to start about, I believe it's line 38. It'll say cash beginning balance. Your audit will show you what the beginning cash balance was for the 23-24 year. Enter that here. And then enter your expenses and your revenue, and then scroll down to the bottom of the page to make sure that what your audit says is your ending balance for the year matches column D. Column D should be exactly what is shown on your budget. If there's one thing that I get questions about once in a while is I don't see a code there that matches my audit. There's many blank lines. You can add in additional information if you're not sure where a code goes, but just make sure your expenses, your revenues, your beginning balance, and your ending balance match the audit exactly. And it's better to pull from the audit because this is what the auditors are going to look for. When they're reviewing the budget, they're going to look to make sure that your audit and your page 2 match. Whatever you end column D with, whatever that last balance is, that will become your beginning balance for column E or the middle column. So make sure ending balance is your new beginning balance. So a couple of things on this, you can, as you're preparing your budget, if you're starting now, you can run a year-to-date financial and enter where you are. And then you can enter an estimated amount for the next couple of months for July and August. But the main thing, it doesn't have to be perfect. Column E is just an estimated amount. But what's probably really good to note about column E is down at the bottom, your ending balance. Think about that ending balance. Where are you going to be on August 31st? Will you have any cash left over to apply towards cash reserve in the next year? You don't want that to be too far off track. You don't want it to say, for example, if you only have $400,000 left at the end of the year to pull forward, you don't want it to be misrepresented and say $1 million because that'll affect your new budget that you're planning. So column E can just kind of be an estimated amount. Just make sure that the ending balance is fairly accurate of where you expect that to be at the end of the year. And then whatever your ending balance is for column E, that will become your beginning balance for column F. So again, ending moves to beginning and on through the fund worksheets. Now, when you're looking at the general fund, think about, take a look at each of these and make sure that you're looking at, that you have, again, in the salary line, do you have increase, are you doing a 3% increase on salary and benefits? Make sure that's accounted for. SPED is an exclusion. So each of those SPED lines are noted in there. So make sure that you know that, okay, that's an exclusion of my budget. I spent 400,000 this year. I might have 500,000 this year. So make sure you're estimating that properly. You don't want to exaggerate or inflate anything severely, but you do want to be accurate. Make sure you're accounting for if you need to hire an additional teacher in each of those columns. Make sure that you're accounting for any vehicle maintenance, building maintenance, legal fees, all of those types of things you would want to calculate in this top half of the budget. So this is the lower half of the budget, which is your revenues. Again, in your revenues don't have to be exact because the auditor's office isn't going to ding you if you get more money than you expected. They will only ding you if you spend more money than expected. So the revenue is far less critical that is exact. The only thing that needs to be exact in the revenue is your state aid. Make sure your state aid and your county treasurer's balance are flowing through correctly, that those are correct. State aid and county treasurer's balance. Those are the important pieces on the lower half. Now, one tip, trick type of thing that I can share with you is when you're jumping back and forth, looking at where you stand on things, you can also build in a percentage like you did with your property valuations on the basic data input page. You could also put in a percentage here under your property tax asking and play with those numbers, with those percentages, and then jump back over to your special hearing page so that you can see, oh, if I change this or I change this here, this is what it does to my levy. So building in percentages and working with those numbers can be very helpful. But again, going back to your special hearing page, that's a really good snapshot of where your levy was for the prior year and your tax asking versus this year. All right, so the most important thing is that you save your budget and upload it to the LC2 often. It's there, we have built in the LC2 where all your limitations are at with your budget authority, your property tax authority, your allowable reserves, your levy limits, all their what's the word I'm trying to say? We have it built in so that if you're over budget, it will ding you. And so you want to make sure that you're uploading often so that you can see if you're above or below. There's unlimited uploads in the LC2. So if you upload and you find out you're $1 million over budget, well, just go back to your budget worksheets and make some corrections and upload to the LC2 again. Your goal in the LC2 is to have 0 unused budget authority by the time that you're done. If it's over, it will ding you in red. Nope, you're out of your limit. So just make sure that you're uploading often, checking those limits, especially before you go to your final budget and joint public hearings, all of those various hearings. Make sure that your LC2 shows everything in place because you don't want to be over budget and then have it approved because then you got to go to another hearing. So make sure that you're uploading often. And in the LC2, anytime you make changes, make sure you save, because if you don't save it, it'll revert back. So always make sure you're saving. Recalculate and save. Yes. Recalculate and save. Yes. All right. Some of the budget reminders I've already mentioned this a couple times. Make sure your state aid is correct. Motor vehicle tax, make sure that that is similar to last year. You don't want that to be over exaggerated. Same with county treasurer's balance. Make sure you've entered a county treasurer's balance, and then make sure your beginning and ending balances are flowing through correctly. All right, this is just a fun page to show you how to calculate your levy. So total tax request divided by assessed valuation times 100 equals your levy. And how much will my levy generate in property taxes? How much will an additional 1% in levy generate additional property tax? So this is just a fun page to help you do some of those calculations you might get asked about. All right, current year budget reminders. We briefly talked about this at the beginning, but make sure that you're checking the current year budget to make sure you avoid overspending. If you need to do an amendment, make sure you're contacting one of us so that we can assist you with that. If you have anything you have left over on August 31st, can you make any transfers for the year? Can you transfer money? Any excess cash to the depreciation fund to save for a larger expense? Can you transfer anything to the employee benefit fund, school nutrition fund, activity fund, basically a non-taxing fund is what you want to think about. If there's anything to be transferring over, remember that if you're, it's all about how you word it. So if you're, if you need to replace the track, replacement would come out of depreciation. You need to replace a van, that would come out of depreciation. Once you move it to depreciation, you can't move it back. So make sure that you're accounting for One thing to note is if you move something to depreciation, let's say we're going to account for a track, but then we decide we need a new mower. It just takes board authority, just noting it in the meeting minutes, board authority to change that transaction.
We got a couple of questions that came in, so I'm gonna jump in on those.
Sure.
One of the questions was there changes to the motor vehicle tax? There was a bill that was introduced this last session to change the distribution of that. It did not pass, so there is no change to motor vehicle tax in the distribution to school districts. The other question that came in is how do we get the county treasurer's balance? My recommendation is don't worry about it. It's not a number that I've ever had anybody say they got in trouble for, or that the auditors really looked that close at. So I just what's that?
1%, yeah.
I just tell them to put an estimate in there that's similar to the prior years or make a number up. It's not anything worth spending time on.
Agreed. Was that just those two?
Yep.
Okay. All righty, I think I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you. All right, so if you need to amend the current year's budget, this is required if any fund, taxing or non-taxing, will exceed your total budget of disbursements and transfers out. You will need to hold a hearing and have it approved prior to August 31st. The total requirements must equal total resources available. And the property tax request cannot change if the tax levy has already been set. So required action, again, hold a hearing to amend. The budget, you need to note that the budget as it was originally amended, the purpose of the amendment, the rationale for amending, and include, it's always helpful to say in your notice to the public that no impact to district tax levy. Some of those documentations, I think Jeff mentioned earlier, but proof of publication, your board meeting minutes showing the approval of the amendment, and then a copy of page 2 of your budget document. If it changes one of the taxing funds, like the general fund or the special building fund, you will need to call us to unlock the LC2, and you'll need to upload it, make sure that all funds are in balance before approving that. A copy of the amendment documents would go to the state auditor, the county clerks, and NDE. Again, amending the LC2, if it affects, I forgot depreciation and employee. So general fund, special building, depreciation, employee benefit fund. If it affects any of those funds that are found in the LC2, you will need to make sure that we help you unlock the LC2 so that you can upload to the LC2. Again, make sure that everything is in balance, that you have no red errors that are saying that something is over its limit before you go to the hearing to, again, make sure that what you're approving, is within the required limits. I think there was a question. Did somebody see it? Oh, I saw something pop up.
Question came in, does unspent budget authority affect the next year's budget authority? Yes, it does. If it's in if you leave unused budget authority in that column, you're limited to how much you can access the following year. When that law changed about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, when I started, was when that went into effect. A lot of schools started including the full amount of budget authority in their budget. Doesn't mean they're asking for more taxes, but they're including those expenditures in so that they have access to that authority in future years. That's something we can talk through the benefits of what happens there if you do or don't do that. So, but yes, you are limited to how much of the unused budget authority you will have in future years. So when you see that line increase, you're possibly limiting how much you can use down the road.
Okay, I'm also your favorite person for pupil transportation. So if you have any questions about that, make sure that you're contacting me. You can call me, text me, email me. Don't call Bryce. He doesn't like people transportation as much as I do. All right, so the forms required. I'm just gonna briefly go over this. If you have any questions about people transportation, I would like to keep the budget information going, so make sure that you email me, call me, text me on the side afterwards about any of these questions. But you're required to do a pre-trip inspection before the vehicle goes out on the road each day, and that it means for cars, SUVs, vans, school buses, everything gets a pre-trip inspection. Every quarter or every 80 days, you have to do an annual inspection, which is performed by a mechanic. These forms are new and updated on the People Transportation website. Do not use the old forms. They are from 2004 and they do not match the federal requirements. So make sure that you're accessing the new forms from my website. Admin days is coming up. And we had a class last year for drug and alcohol requirements, what is required, and it was so popular that we've been asked to do it again. So Federal Motor Carrier, State Patrol, and myself, we will be at admin days to work with you through the drug and alcohol requirements. A new thing that came up, you've noticed in your People Transportation reporting is that you now need to keep track of mileage so that you can upload a document for the auditors. So make sure that you're developing a method to keep track of your mileage separate from your route, your activities, and your sped. If you're not sure what to do, I posted an example form under my announcements on the People Transportation website that you're welcome to use. We have a quarterly Zoom meeting, which is a great opportunity to find out about any updates. I have it as a very open forum. You can ask anything, you can say anything, there's no judgment. If you don't know, ask. And so that's been a really great place for people to just jump on and find out new information. The big thing I know everybody wants to know about is vans. So at the beginning of May, I attended the National Congress hearing on People Transportation, and all of the gray areas for vans have been eliminated. And the national standards will come out about the end of July, and then we will begin rule revision to update things. But what it is all vans, new and used, can be only 10 passengers. That means 9 passengers plus your driver, 10 total. And thank you, Michelle. So I have an example on the screen. When you're looking at, if you open the driver's side door, you'll see 2 stickers. And the tire and loading information sticker must say total 10 passengers. If it says anything more, it does not meet federal requirements. There's a second sticker on the door label that's much longer, and about halfway through, it will say vehicle type. The vehicle type must be MPV, multi-purpose vehicle. If it says bus, not school bus, it does not meet federal requirements. So make sure you give me a call. If you're not sure what to look for, I'm happy to help walk you through that. If you're looking for a new van and you want to make sure it meets the federal requirements, send me the spec sheet or send me a picture of door stickers, but do it before you take possession. Let's make sure that you're in a vehicle that meets the new federal requirements.
Just real quick to clarify, so that does not change the current 11 passenger, what Nebraska has now. That won't go into effect until the rule is completed, which likely will be a year or so away from this time next year by the time it goes through all the process of rule revision and governor review and everything else. So it doesn't change anything until that rule revision becomes final.
But yes, but once it becomes final, you cannot have that 11 passenger after that becomes final in about a year from now. So make sure you're planning in your budget. No vans are grandfathered in. Sorry, Chris. Nobody's going to be grandfathered in. So you do need to make sure that you're making plans because that 11 passenger will go away in about a year from now. So make plans. Don't wait till the last minute because vans are in high demand. So email me, text me. Outside of here, I think my information's on the next page. There it is. So make sure you're jotting down the information so that we can chat about vans. later today. Thank you so much.
I guess it's my turn. I don't have as much as exciting stuff and nothing about transportation, so thank you, Stephanie, for clearing that one up for us. My name's Kelsey. I'll be talking about exclusions and LC2s. To start off, there are two types of exclusions, the levy exclusion and expenditure exclusion. Both exclusions allow for more flexibility within your budget. The levy exclusion allows districts to increase their levy amount above the $5 limit without state board approval. While expenditure exclusions do require state board approval, they do allow the districts to spend more than their certified budget authority. There are several expenditure exclusions that do not need state board approval. These expenditures include sped transportation and others related student services coded to the 2100s and 2190s, as well as any grant listed on the special grants fund list. So if you're worried about exceeding your budget authority, please review the special grants fund list to see if there is any exclusion that you can utilize. As previously mentioned, there are certain exclusions that do not need state board approval. These exclusions can be found on the special grants fund list located in section B of the LC2. Any grants not listed on the special grants fund list will have an asterisk and need state board approval. Items that could be marked with an asterisk includes insurance settlements, interfund loans between taxing funds, reimbursements for awards of the court, repayments to county governments for previous overpayments, short-term borrowings, grants from city and county governments, as well as grants provided by corporate foundations and other private interests. One thing I'd like to point out is the School Safety and Security Act grant. This grant is not listed on the special grants list and does need state board approval. If your district is wanting to utilize this exclusion, please email me a letter requesting your exclusion request on school letterhead. On the screen, there is a list of all the different things, all the different exclusions that we are needing approval from. Go next. Schedule A can be found in your budget document. This is where you will find your general fund exclusion within the LC2. When uploading your budget document into the LC2, the Schedule A will automatically populate. Schedule A is where you'll enter such things as repairs for infrastructure, judgments, distance education, voluntary terminations, retirement and contribution increases, and funding from Native American Impact Aid.
Hold on one second there. I'm just gonna jump in and say, just to clarify, if you get board approval on something like retirement contribution increase, you're not required, you can do that if you don't know how your budget's all gonna work out, but at the end of the day, you don't need it. You're not required to put it on Schedule A. If it's gonna cause you to have more unused budget authority, you may not want to do that. If you're needing more budget authority, then you absolutely would want to enter it in there. But just keep in mind, there's a lot of budgets I review where I'll look at it and they have a lot of unused budget authority, and doing that or the special grant fund or any of those exclusions aren't helping you if you're adding to your unused budget authority.
Thank you for clarifying that. Early childhood grant, education grant, and new education site. If your district is eligible to receive an childhood education grant, you received an email from me with a template to complete. I will enter your requested amount on your behalf into the LC2. This way it will automatically populate when you do sign in. While early childhood education grants do not need state board approval, they will remain in your budget base and will be used to calculate your future budget authority. It is important to note that for the new elementary attendance site exclusion, you must qualify for the allowance. This exclusion can be used for costs related to operating the site, such as salaries, utilities, and building maintenances for the first year. This is the big one that's been changed just recently, the retirement contribution increase. During the most recent legislative session, a bill was approved that changed the amount of the retirement contribution increase starting for the 25-26 school year. This change will allow districts to include the 24-25 expenditure amount and the retirement contribution increase exclusion request for both 25-26 and 26-27. The 25-26 contribution increase has been reduced from 8.08 or reduced to 8.08 from 9.88% and will continue to fluctuate each year based on Emperor's funding. Though the contribution increase amount will change each year, the coding will stay the same. It is important to note that a new template will be published each summer after the new contribution rate is released. So you'll want to be sure that you're using the correct template for your exclusion. The current exclusion template actually has 3 tabs that you'll want to complete. Tab 1 is an automatic fill, which is on the screen. Tab 2 is 25-26 and tab 3 is 24-25. For 25-26, go ahead and estimate your salary amount, but for 24-25, you should have a pretty good idea of what your actual is, and you'll enter that information on there. And then both of those tabs will flow into the first page, and that'll be your request for the 25-26. Did you have any other? Okay.
That's a good. That's a good thing they needed to it.
Requesting state or board approval. When you're requesting it, we are in need of a template that states your district's name, district's ID number. Those are 2 things that often get forgotten, especially the ID number. The type of exclusion, the amount that is being requested, and the amount that is being requested. The exclusion templates are available in the budget section of NDE's Financial and Organizational Service website. The state board approval, the exclusion request will be posted to our website within 5 business days following the board's meeting. And please know that you are able to include the exclusion in your budget planning before the state board approval has posted it. So right now, the next state board meeting is August 8th. So if you've sent me your exclusion and it hasn't been posted yet, go ahead and put those in your budget. And then once it's approved, you'll see it within a week after.
Question came in for, this is probably one of the top 3 most common questions of the summer, I would say. For 25-26, do we still need to code the increased retirement contribution to code 237, or does that requirement go away? That requirement does not go away. Probably won't ever go away. The amount that you're coding to 237, the increased retirement contribution account code will change year to year now. So it's the amount that's over the 7.35%. Any amount over that goes to that code 237 still. So the difference between 7.35 and 8.08 will be coded there this year. So you'll continue to use that. It's still required. But the amount going to that will change year to year based on what the required contribution rate is. The amounts under the 7.35 will go to the same count codes as before.
Thing. If you do have a question about exclusions, let me know. Otherwise, send your request to me and I'll get them on the agenda for approval. Next is the LC2 or lid computation. This is located in the NDE portal. Instructions on how to complete the LC2 can be found on the FOS website. It is important to note that when updating your budget uploading your budget into the LC2, you need to ensure that your budget is in the correct format. Otherwise, you'll receive an error. Each year, a new activation code is required to access the LC2. If you are a new superintendent, you will need to send an email to the advisor help desk to request access to the portal. If anytime you do need assistance with the NDE portal, you'll also need to contact the advisor help desk, and you can either contact them by email or phone. The purpose of the LC2, if you're wondering, is used to confirm that your budget is in compliance. It does not exceed any limitations. It is also used to calculate your unused budget authority. Your goal, as Stephanie mentioned, is to get your unused budget authority down to 0. If it is not in compliance or if a limitation is exceeded, you'll receive a error message in red. Once your budget has been approved and adopted, you will want to send copies of your supporting documentation to the APA's office, to Jeff. Your county clerk's office, as well as upload the documentation as a single PDF for NDE and the LC2. To assist in making this process easier, we have tried to align the required documents across all three of the offices. Let's see. Each year when you certify your budget authority, your unused budget authority will automatically pre-populate in section A of your LC2. If you have any unused budget authority, the value will be listed on the left-hand side, like shown on the slide. You will need to enter this amount on the right-hand side of the screen in cell A355. Your total allowable budget authority will then populate in A780. Next. Election of additional budget authority. If you held a successful special election to increase your budget authority, you'll need to indicate that amount on your LC2. The approved amount will need to be entered. If you held a successful special election to increase your levy, like with the special election to increase your budget authority, you also need to list the increase on your LC2. When you select yes, the additional box will open and you'll be asked to provide additional information about the levy override. A few of the questions that you will be asked are, what was the total property tax levy that was approved by the patrons in excess of the $5? How many years will the levy override be in effect? When will the levy ride take effect and when will it expire? Next. Section D, or property tax authority section, it was added in 23. When you upload your budget into the LC2, your certified assessed valuation and property tax requests will then populate into your LC2. Next, you'll be asked if at least 70% of the school board approved to exceed the certified property tax request authority. If the answer is yes, the maximum amount allowed will show in cell D130. This amount should also be entered into D140. Also, the amount allowed for the total property tax authority will be shown in section D of the LC2. On this slide, you will see a red arrow next to the cell D310. In this cell, you'll be asked to enter the amount that the total property tax was reduced as a result of the increase in SPED and foundation aid. This amount is required by the state legislation and cannot be zero. If it is, we will be contacting you because it needs to be recalculated in something other than zero. Next. LC2 error messages. It is important to remember that you cannot submit your LC2 with errors. Error messages will appear in red and you'll receive them if you exceed your unused budget authority. If you receive a message, you will need to return to your budget, make necessary corrections, double check that you utilized any and all possible exclusions. And once that is done, you can re-upload your budget into the LC2. And like mentioned, you can upload as many times as necessary. Just be sure you recalculate and save. Next. Here are some tips and tricks. You can upload your budget into the LC2 as many times as you would like. Please remember to recalculate and save often. You don't want to have to re-enter everything. The goal for the unused budget authority is 0. When entering special grants fund, be sure to click save before returning to the LC2. And lastly, make sure to upload your documentation as a single PDF after your district has approved it. These next 2 slides are checklists to assist you with working through your budget. First, did you send your expenditure exclusion request to me? Make sure you are utilizing the LC2 while working on your budget. Is your budget within the spending, levy, and property tax limits? Does the LC2 match your budget? Is a joint public hearing required? Does a hearing notice match the budget documents? Did you publish your hearing notice? Make sure that you confirm that your hearing notices were published in the newspaper. Be sure to reserve adequate time for public comments at your budget hearing. Submit your budget documents to NDE, APA, and the county clerk by September 30th. And finally, submit your property tax resolution to the county by October 15th. And finally, you will need to submit your budget documents as a single PDF to NDE through the LC2 no later than September 30th. It's important to note that paper and email versions will not be accepted. And once your documentation has been reviewed and approved, you'll receive a confirmation email from NDE.
Thank you, Kelsey. This is Kelsey's first presentation with us, so good job. We've all been there, that nerve-wracking, we don't know what we're talking about, but we do. All right, now we're gonna shift the focus from budget topics to state aid and other related topics. And please make sure, as Bryce said, if you have any comments in it, to put those in the chat and we'll address them as soon as they come in. We're gonna jump straight to state aid certification. So we certified state aid on or before March 1st. So you're looking at your cert document for a district. And I wanted to just kind of break it down into some categories as we go through the rest of my presentation and then how we get to those calculations. So typically your document is in 2-page format. I've condensed it to 1 page for the presentation. And we're just going to start at the top. So we do a calculation to come up with what your formula students total is, and we gather that from the fall membership data as of October. We also bring in early childhood counts as of October and applied ADM factor to that to come up with your total formula students. Then the next section that's highlighted in purple is your formula needs. So the formula needs components there are what we calculate to be the needs to educate the students in your district. Then we move down to the blue section, and that's formula resources. We call it your resources. That's the resources that a district has to educate those students. So your money, those receipts that you get in, you'll see your yield for local effort, the net option funding, and then of course the big one, the foundation aid. The next area would be on page 2 of your document, and that's that state aid calculation. So for this district, they're an equalized district, which means they receive equalization aid. So bottom line, that means that their needs are higher than their resources. So we need to equalize them and give them some additional aid that they don't receive on their own to equalize their district. Then moving down the document, we come up with this total state aid calculated. You'll see a prior year correction. And then finally, that green circled area is your total state aid. So that's the state aid that's going to be paid from September through June. That also is the amount that Stephanie mentioned in the budget documents that you want to make sure that you grab this bottom bold number, not the one above it, above the prior year correction. That green amount is actually the amount you're going to receive within the budget cycle that you're working on. So that was a lot of information in just one slide. So how do you break it down? We have a couple documents for you to break it down and to help you understand the process. So we have the TIOSA document, decodes the components of equalization aid. It's a resource for more detailed information. And of course, we have it on our website, and I have that page there for you. So reading that document, as I've learned in my first year, calculating state aid can be a lot of information. So another document we have is the TIOSA FAQ document. So it's for those not so really dumb questions that maybe you've been around for a while and you're just starting to grasp state aid and want to dive into a little bit more how it pertains to your district. This is a great document to go through. And what is foundation aid? What is equalization aid? What's a formula student again? Michelle just told me really fast, but I still don't know. So look at this document, see if it gives you some connect the dots moments. And if you've looked at both documents and you still have some questions, please reach out and we can break down some of the calculations that pertain to your district, because we know that each district is not apples to apples, and different allowances and calculations can have a different impact on your district. So we're here to help you figure that out for your district. Okay, so back to certification. So each year, as I mentioned, we do that certification by May 1st, and we pull in your fall membership as of October. We pull in the assessed valuations, and we use the most current AFR data that has been submitted. So for this last calculation, that was your 23-24 AFR information. Then each year we do a recalc. Recalc happens late in the summer. At this point, we bring in your average daily membership at ADM. We now will have your certified valuations. And if any amendments were done to the district's AFR data, we will pull that new information in to make sure we have the most current information for your district. So the recalc is looking at many other things, these are the big ones, but basically kind of bringing in the information that's actual now and not maybe some of the estimations that we're having to do when we're doing certification. So here's the documents that we will post each time we do certification. So you would have seen the A1 documents posted in March. Then late summer, we're going to do that recalc. So we'll post a new document that'll show each district's recalculated state aid. If you go to the end of this document, it will have the same dollar amount of state aid that's been paid out. So what changes, so we can't pay out any more state aid than what we've been designated. But what happens is the local effort rate changes. And so it creates a balancing factor that reallocates the monies through the district based on the information that's changed. So what is prior year correction? So to break it down for you and how we got to this year's prior year correction. So for the 24-25 certification, we did the certification in May, then late last summer, we did the recalc for 24-25. So now on the 25-26 cert docs that are posted, you're going to see that 24-25 prior year correction. So the difference between certification and recalc creates that difference, then that will be shown on your cert docs as the prior year's correction. So breaking down the prior year correction. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing a document that's called the lump sum document. And this document alerts districts if they had a correction that was more than $1,000. It gives districts the opportunity to request that amount as a lump sum payment. The lump sum payment is then paid with your first installment, which is done in September. So if you find yourself in need of the funds, you can request that amount. You don't have to, and if we don't hear from you, we're gonna roll that prior year calculation into your total state aid payments and break that down into 10 payments. Again, if you don't need the funds, you don't need to do anything. If you would like them, just reply to our request when you get that information sent out to you. If the lump sum payment is under $1,000, we're just gonna automatically apply that to your September payment. So the September payment would be a little bit more than the following 9 payments. Oh, forgot my little, there you go. All right, so if you find yourself as a district that your boundaries are going to change due to annexation by a city or village, please request the annexation form from me and get that submitted to us so we can make sure we have your most current valuations. And the form is due back to us by August 20th, so we can get that in our files. All right, so any questions so far on the state aid documents? I don't think we have any come in.
There's one, I'm
Okay.
responding to it. I'll be answering that when I present in a little bit.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're gonna move our focus now to the NDE portal and the collections that are included there that pertain to the data we need for our calculations, mostly pertaining to state aid. I want to point out here that I know it might be kind of a challenging or confusing time right now because we are moving to a new portal platform. So we have what's called the new portal and they're calling the old portal the legacy portal. So we're going to try to do our best with our notifications to you, directing you to which portal you need to go to and whether the collection is still inside the CDC, moved out of the CDC. So just make sure if it gets confusing that that you're referring back to the information that we released to you on where those collections might be located. Okay, so we've got some collections due right now. Stephanie mentioned the pupil transportation report. That was closing the 15th and is now in the audit window for changes and for follow-ups the districts that haven't submitted. We also have the newer enrollment option rejection report. That one has till the end of the month and then we'll be in the audit period. Right now, it looks like only about 100 of you have submitted your information in that rejection report. So if you haven't done so, please, because it does take a little bit of organization on that. There's some specific questions that the legislature's asked us to ask. So it does take a little bit of time to compile that information that was from the past 12 months. So please put that on your list to get to as soon as possible and get that completed. Also,
Can I jump in there?
yep.
That report is a hot topic in legislature. So I just want to again draw attention to that enrollment option. Make sure that you're reporting that correctly. We had a lot of media, a lot of senators very interested in that, and we're anticipating that or we've already heard that there's going to be more bills introduced next session around special education and the enrollment option program. So again, if you haven't completed that for your district, you need to do that, but also just make sure that it's accurate information because it's going to be analyzed. I'm going to say in depth over the interim between now and January, and then probably in more in depth come the session next year.
And we did add a new question this year that asked, were any students with an IEP accepted? And I've actually seen several districts say yes. So that was, I think, the big item that that's been had a focus on, that students weren't being accepted if they had an IEP. All right, other collections that are due now, and so days in session, instructional program hours, that one has closed the 15th, is now in the audit window. I've seen a couple districts that haven't submitted that, so you might check that one, make sure that you've submitted. I'll be reaching out to you. And then the Superintendent Pay Transparency Act, that one actually has moved out of the CDC, so I made an error on that one, but it's moved out of the CDC and is available. It's open year round, new contracts for new superintendents starting. Those new documents are due by September 1st. However, if any updates or amendments are done throughout the year, they do need to be uploaded so that they can be published there. A little bit more. So the superintendent requirement, it's timeline required by statute. For the collection that I just mentioned, it's on or before August 1st. That PDF of your entire contract needs to be uploaded, not a copy of Schedule D from the budget document. It needs to be the official contract that was adopted by your board and signed. Then by September 30th, you will complete that section, that Schedule D in the district budget, and then that is submitted in the LC2. If we find that those two requirements have not been fulfilled, there potentially could be some withholding from your state and local funds if the contracts have not been submitted. I've been here for 6+ years. I haven't seen that happening, so we will help you out if one of those deadlines are missed so that you can get those documents uploaded. Obviously, you have them, it just becomes an oversight. Okay, upcoming collections that are due. And I want to put a focus on it. Last year, we told you we were going to have a new TOSA state aid collection. However, the programmers, as we're evolving to the new portal and the new platform, they just ran out of room to compile these collections together. I've been told, and we've started doing some review, that these 6 collections that are shown will be under the umbrella of the TOSA state aid collection. So instead of looking for each one of those, you're going to look for the TOSA state aid collection. And then within that collection, you'll be able to complete the data that is required for each of those. Some of those may not pertain to your district, so you don't need to do anything. You would just complete the ones that pertain to your district. Then one other collections, the PK instructional program hours and your K programming. All of those collections are due by October 15th, and there'll be more information coming out from us of where those are located, so that we make sure you have the most up-to-date information. Here is a snippet of what that TOSA state aid collection is going to look like. So you see, once you're in the collection, then you'll see each one of those supplementary collections that you'll be able to view and enter data. The collection will allow for different users to log in and enter the information. So we realize that not every district doesn't have the same person doing this, entering this information. So still numerous or multiple people will be able to log into it, enter the information. Those folks that are not the administrators will not see the approved button. The only person that's going to see the approved button will be the superintendent / admin, the administrator for the district in the portal. So please, superintendents, when you're in there and you're you're getting ready to approve this, make sure the data that's entered is the correct and most up-to-date information, because we are using this for your state aid calculation. So it's one final layer of oversight to allow you to look at this information. You would be able to make changes, resubmit, and approve at the same time as well. All right, so just a little bit more on what LP and poverty expenditure requirement is. So come July, the first week in July, we will be reposting the 24-25 calculated poverty and LEP requirement report, big long name. So this report is going to be alerting districts of what they need to be coding in their current fiscal year, their current 24-25 AFR. So once you see this report, make sure that you're coding appropriately to the 1150 and 1160 account codes for LEP and poverty. The report is showing you what the requirement is of coding to that 117.65% of your expenditures. The information on the report is derived from the district's information received in October of 2023 that we used in your 24-25 state aid calculation. Come this fall, when the TIOSA collection opens up, you'll be entering your estimates for what we will use on the 26-27 state aid certification. So all very confusing, but we try to make sure that you have the most current information, and then getting back that information to you so you fulfill the requirement. At the bottom there, those links will take you to the page when we release that information the first week in July, showing you what those reports are and your coding requirement for the 24-25 AFR. Okay, a little bit more information on the portal. So this is a snippet of the CDC. So I've had several calls from superintendents in the last year just looking for collections that have disappeared, like the enrollment rejection report moved out a year and was on the homepage. I think there was a couple other ones, school bond maybe moved out. So if you're not sure, start here first, and right when you open up the CDC, it's going to be on the current year. If your first sign that the collection is no longer in the CDC, you're not going to find it. So what I want to show you, the tools that are built into there, is if you click at the top of any of those headers, you can sort the collections by the due date. You can sort it by the collection by ABC order. So it allows you to see the top section of the collections that are open, the bottom section is the collections that are closed. So if you don't see a collection there and you want to know what did I enter into the LEP and poverty collections last year, you could still find that information. You're not going to find it in the main page of the collection, but you can go here and you can change the year, and you'll see that collection pop up and actually go in and look at your collection. So the takeaway from this is if you don't see the collection there, you can change the year and you can get access to prior year correction or prior year collections data. Is that a question you need to answer?
I don't know the answer to that question.
What was-
The question is, do we still report each substitute teacher and how many days worked in 24-25?
That's an advisor service desk
Advisor,
question.
yeah, probably there.
Yeah, so we're not the experts on advisor coding and that type of thing, so always direct those questions back to the advisor and advisor service desk, as we're supposed to call that now. All right, so with that said, here we're gonna just talk about the advisor reports a little bit. So to go into advisor, you're on your main page of the portal, click on the student and staff and SSRS button, and then you'll see the advisor validation button there. That takes you into advisor. So again, we're not the expert of the collection, the program, but we do gather data that is located in there that districts have submitted. So information is received nightly from your SIS, your students information system. Very, very important. Reports from your SIS and advisor should be reviewed for discrepancies. So if you're seeing discrepancies, we've been told in most districts they can match up pretty accurately. So if you're finding some discrepancies there, make sure that you're trying to dig into that, either contacting your vendor and or reaching out to the advisor service desk to find out why you might have some discrepancies. Things we've heard of are one of the systems you didn't have the right code for snow days, you didn't have the right code for sick days, or days that you let out early types, things like that. So those type of discrepancies can cause issues with the reports that we have listed down there for you. But it also could cause you to have a variance noted, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but a variance noted by your auditors when they're reviewing the system, the reports to each other. So again, you have the data available to you. Make sure that you're doing some data checks and reviews throughout the year, maybe even, first month, the school's in session, maybe definitely be looking at the reports before fall membership, before that October month hits, and making sure that those reports are matching up. So the reports we use for TIOSA state aid calculation are listed there, the average daily membership, fall membership, your opt-in and opt-out students. I had a big one. I had a big district last year. They did not, they were missing 90 students that had opted in. So I believe the net option funding is around 12,000 a student. So they were down 90 students. So take 90 times $12,000, and their state aid was down that much. So when they called, wanted to know why state aid was down, we dove in and we found that it was there was some issue with their option in students were not being calculated. So now that district has to wait for recalc for those to be brought in and those funds to be reallocated. So that was a very major costly mistake for them. And then contract students, your qualified early childhood and the LAP students are accounted for in there. Just a note about fall membership. So fall membership for us, just district membership reported as of October 1st, and then also for early childhood education, fall membership as of October 1st. The statutes are there if you'd like to review that information. All right, any questions about state aid before we go into annual financial report, the AFR? Right, easy crowd today. All right, AFR submission is due November 1st. The AFR system opens October 1st, and utilize the AFR summary report to confirm financial information aligns with the audit. That audit is due November 5th. If your financial information does not align with the audit, you will be getting a response back from school finance requesting that you make some corrections. So either is the audit incorrect or is your financial information correct? Most times it's your financial information is missing some journal entries, or there was a miscommunication with the auditor. Those documents have to match. So you will be required to go back and update your financial information and then go through the upload process again. If the district is not in the submitted status, meaning that the AFR has not been submitted by November 1st, there's some potential for funds to be withheld. So it's very important that you reach that deadline. And then we are working really diligently with districts to get you to that point. So even if you don't have the audit, we need to get you into the submission status by that November 1st to satisfy the statute. Okay, some AFR resources for you. Bryce used to give this presentation and I couldn't change that little snippet there. He likes that. So AFR resources for you throughout the year is we release the current year's users manual and master code list. Our target is December, sometimes it's January based on if we're waiting for some code changes. Then we re-release an updated version in May of the following year. So we call that the second edition. That second edition allows us to share updated codes with you or anything that might be new changes. I think this year there was the security grant that was added mid-year. So make sure you're referring to the May document and looking at, I think it's page 4 where you're going to see any of the code changes, because it might be really important to you, or maybe some questions that you had on some specific coding. Also throughout the year, we have the AFR upload test site. This test site is utilized for you to export your financial data from your software anytime throughout the year and upload that file to the test link to make sure that you're using valid account codes. So the test link, all it does is identify codes that are not available and allows you the opportunity to go back to your software to make those changes. This will save you from doing that when you're under the wire in October, trying to work towards that deadline. So things for you to help yourself throughout the year to make sure you have the most correct data in your financial software. At the bottom there, we do have a link to that information. All right, just some AFR coding notes. Kind of a clarification this year, not a new code. So all code costs associated with professional development. This is you sending your staff to the ESU for a meeting, to it could be multiple things. So anything associated with that professional development, we want you to code that to the 330 employee training and development. So this also includes the travel related expenses to attend that professional development. Yes, there is a travel code, but that travel code is used for other types of travel. We want you to charge the professional development travel to the 330. Also, this year there was a change to the threshold for capital expenditures. So 6,000 supplies versus the 700 capital expenditures. So federal guidelines changed the threshold from 5,000 to 10,000 for the 24-25 fiscal year. However, you still should be following your district policy. The guidance is if it's for state funds, if you're doing coding for state funds, continue to code, continue to use the threshold of 5,000 because that is our state threshold. And if it's a federal expenditure that you're coding, then you would code that to 10,000.
So just to clarify, what we're saying there is, if your district policy still says 5,000, you have to do 5,000 for both federal and state. If you want to change your capitalization policy for federal funds to 10,000, you have to change your district policy first. Then you can have a capitalization policy for federal funds of 10,000. You're allowed to go up to 10,000, but regardless, you have to follow your policy. So if the policy still says 5,000, that's what you have to do for all funds.
Thank you. All right, so AFR amendments. We can't say we love amendments, but common reasons for amendments. So the big ones over the years have been sped. So potentially a district wasn't hitting their maintenance of effort. So the teams here were notified the district they hadn't met MOE and they had to go back and do some recoding. So the issues there is that a district might have coded true sped cost to regular education to those 1100s. So make sure if it's a true sped cost that you're doing that proper coding to make sure that you're reaching your MOE. Then additionally, once a district goes to request reimbursement for those sped expenses in the FFR, they might have requested more funds than what was originally coded in the AFR. So the SPED team does a verification. They validate what you have submitted in the FFR system or the GMS system to what the AFR. So they do talk to each other. And if the reimbursement request is higher than the AFR, then they're going to fail your submission and either require you to request less or allow you to amend the AFR. So if that happens, then they're going to be providing you information to contact us to do an amendment. Right now, we're seeing close to 140 amendments for the CTE grant funding. So I'm sure there's many of you on here that have been alerted that you're having to amend for the past CTE funds that were released to your district. So fun times here for us with helping districts amend theirs so that we don't have to, those funds don't have to come back. Other things, I'm coding SPED expenditures to federal accounts more than revenue. This decreases your reimbursement from the state. Also make sure cost for SPED for birth to pre-K is coded to IDA. There's no state reimbursement for birth to pre-K. So if you have an AFR amendment that you need to do, just contact us and we'll help you work through that. So allocating district expenses. I hesitated to conclude this this slide this year because I think it's finally, basically this started out when we changed the new account codes and we created the new AFR collection. So this is just kind of rehashing that you should be coding to the appropriate building level. So if you have elementary expenses, elementary teachers, those should be coded to the elementary building level, not to the district level. So each building, elementary, high school, middle school, they all have their own building levels. Even if you're under one roof, there is a designation to that building level. So do your best to do the appropriate coding to those building level with the most accurate information. If something is coded at the district level, which is still fine, maybe a gym teacher that coaches, that is for the whole building, something like that, or there are lots of many other things. So ND automatically allocates district expenses by ADM. You can change those allocations if it's not appropriate, but bottom line, no more than 50% can be coded at the district level. So if that occurs, and when you're uploading it to the AFR, you would receive an error message that would stop you and require you to go back and do some different coding. We're not really seeing that anymore because I think it's starting to level out as everyone becomes more educated on the requirements of the AFR coding. Okay, this picture is a picture of the actual AFR collection. We call this the district checklist or the homepage. So these are the steps that a district jumps through and completes. Once you complete them, then it jumps to the next step and allows you to start the next one. So the takeaway from this is once the AFR collection opens, you can do these steps, and we encourage you to do these steps before you receive your audit. So again, at this point, now the test link has closed and you would upload your financial information at the first step. At that point, it's going to check for the proper account coding, proper building codes. Sometimes building codes get there's an error there, or a district gets added, or building gets added before it's actually physically has students attending it. And it also makes sure you've uploaded the correct year. So all those balance and checks. So once you complete that, you can move to your building content values. This allows you to get this step out of the way in advance. So grab your insurance declarations page and get the values of your building and contents entered. Next one, the building ending or beginning and ending balances, you might say, I don't have my ending balances, I get those from my auditor. Well, you can still do this step by entering your beginning balances because you can grab last year's audit and get those entered. Just one more step that you can accomplish and allows you to continue moving forward and getting some of those tick marks done. You can go all the way up to validations, errors, and warnings. And again, you might be able to make some corrections, make some changes that's going to allow you to move more efficiently to the finish line once you get that audit. If you have any issues during these steps, don't hesitate to reach out to us and we can help you work through those or explain maybe what kind of error you're getting and what needs to be changed with your financial information. Okay, a little bit more on the value of building and contents. So this one's important. 3% of the total value of building and contents is used in your per pupil cost calculation. So make sure that you're entering those current amounts. Over the last few years, we've seen some districts that the valuations have gone up even 100% as they change insurance carriers. And of course, just building costs have gone up. So not surprising to see the costs values of the buildings go up 30, 50, 70%. So I think we probably intend to see those increases again this year. But 3% of those total will be brought into your per pupil cost calculation. Enter value of buildings and contents by district and by school. So the district is not going to have the majority of the values associated with it. The district should just include items that are shared district wide. So this would be your bus barn, your admin building if you had it, those concession stands, things like that. That's what you should be listed at district level. Then you would want to break down the values of your building based on your elementary and high school. If you're under one roof, you could still do some type of percentage or allocation. You can split it down the middle and put the values 50-50, or you can even do it by your attendance. And if it's a 40-60 split, you can do that calculation and split the values up there. But it is in your best interest to try to give some values based on the building level so that it flows through to your per pupil cost, and it gives you the best reflection of what those costs are. All right, so I mentioned that you could get all this to the steps of the report page. So once you complete that report step and the system, I call it regurgitates. So all the information that you upload, then when you run the reports feature, then our system creates all these great reports for you to use. So we're going to go over some of the highlighted reports and the data that would be important to you. I believe this page is really underutilized by districts as they don't take the time to go into here because usually you're under that deadline trying to get to the finish line. So the SPED report is very important. So the SPED report shows, it brings in last year's SPED costs, and then it will bring in what you submitted this year with SPED costs. And it actually would alert you if you were not going to reach MOE. So you could save yourself some time by reviewing this report and making sure that you're going to reach MOE for this year and not getting that notification from ND later in the year and having to amend. It's also a good tool to use for, your planning purposes of how your SPED expenses may be increasing year over year. So take a peek at it. You can even go into last year's AFR and this information is still there for you to review. The next report is that AFR summary. So this report is the one that you're going to use and that we use to compare that matches the audit. So we pull this AFR summary and we match it to your audit looking for variances. If there's variances, these are the two reports we're going to be referring to when we touch base with you if something's not matching and letting you know that you're going to have to make changes to your financial information. The next report is that per pupil cost report that I mentioned. So this gives you an opportunity to see what your per pupil cost is going to be before it's released publicly on the NEP site. So this allows you, you can pull this report here and look at it, and then you can look at last year's and see what might be changing and noting any major variances. Then the export details, this is the report that you're going to use if your district has to do an amendment. So this is information compiled of what was submitted by your district and letting us know what the original submission is and what the new submission needs to be for the amendment. So great page, a lot of information, other reports there that I didn't go over. So make sure you take a peek at it, either last year's AFR or this year, spend some time and just use the resources that are available for you. All right, so this is regarding district audits. So the auditors are charged with doing some, based on district level transaction, they need to do some testing on expense allocation. They're required to give the following statement that a sample of expense allocations were tested, verifying appropriate allocating to the building level. So we talked about that you need to code to the appropriate building level. And then also the pages that we use for our refill is the supplemental schedule that we require a specific format and order. So this is towards the back of your audits where each fund is listed out. And I use the word require loosely, but we would appreciate that it's in the appropriate format so that all function codes are listed, all fund totals are listed, the beginning and ending balances, and that not only are the account codes listed for the general fund, but the account codes are listed for all funds. Sometimes we find that for activities and bond and special building that not all the account codes are listed. We just see dollar amounts that we have to then try to tie to the AFR summary that does have those account codes. So over the years, I've said you're paying a lot of money for that audit, so require the auditors to do what is requested of them is very helpful. Then for the 24-25 fiscal year, the single audit threshold has now gone to $1 million from $750,000. So we do expect to see probably less single audits as the ESSER funds have gone away, but still a change to that information. So ultimately, we're going to verify your financial information matches the district audit when it's uploaded into the AFR system. Okay, so caution statement here. So districts must have an individual capable of overseeing financial statement information preparation. If there is no one capable of overseeing the financial statement preparation, then they must hire a separate firm to prepare the financial information. So this is an important factor that sometimes is not done properly. Okay, another one of Bryce's fun slides. So ADM testing, this is completed by your auditor. I mentioned this earlier about making sure that your advisor, that your SIS information, your SIS system is talking to advisor correctly. So the auditors will utilize your student attendance summary report. So it's the student level data that verifies ADM and ADA advisor. They do some ADM testing where they sample students from the S report to student files. Then they do ADA testing. This verifies school district attendance report in their student information system. If variances are noted by the auditor, the district must submit a response back to us at the AFR time with a reason for their variances and the action plan to resolve. So this hasn't been very clear in the past, and so we've been reaching out to districts. If we note that variance on that, it's a one-page ADM attendance testing letter that is provided to you with the audit. So do review that, and if there's any variances, you should look into them and figure out why your system is not talking to advisor correctly. The resources for help with that is the advisor service desk and of course your vendor. Okay, so that's the update on those information. Just a side note here, enrollment option program, kind of falls under my umbrella as well as with Kelsey, so we are contact for information on that. There has not been a change to Rule 19 yet, so that's still current. We will be updating the application and the FAQ, probably the first week in July, so you can look for those to be coming. Please make sure that you're using the most current application, for the new, submission period that starts September 1st. We do recommend either, it's a good idea. You can link back to our webpage for the application, but if you do, have the link on your webpage, just make sure that you're having the most current, application that's available to make sure if there's any changes in statute that those are being picked up. Okay, I missed that slide. We will be posting a Spanish version on the website as well, so that'll be available for you. You won't have to ask for that. We get a question of how long should we retain the application? Guidance is till that student graduates or reaches age 21. Just in case that student, wants to come back to you, have some records for them. Obviously you would be getting a new application, from a district if they were moving from a district to yours or moved to a residence, but just a good idea. Program contacts there. Then just as a reminder, so last year, July 19th, they updated the allowable options. So a student may option once during elementary, once during middle school or junior high, and once during high school for a total of 3 times. So what this really means is if an option, or what it also means, if the student option started in elementary, so say they're in an option in elementary, they may seek a new option once they reach the middle and junior high school years. So that was kind of some information in the beginning that we weren't quite sure on how to present that. But for clarification, they may now have a new option in junior high. And then in junior high and then moving to high school, they could then seek a new option for high school as well. And that would be their total of 3 options. The past exceptions are still there for you to review, so you can access those as well. And then again, just another mention that the legislature has that reporting requirement, and that's why that collection is now open. And so we did open it a month earlier to see if we could get that information before districts have their vacations or staff changes, that type of thing. So the collection is open now. The collection is collecting data for the reporting period June 1st through May 31st of 2025. And if you have any questions on that collection, please reach out to myself or Kelsey. And again, only about 100 have submitted, so there's still 145 of you that haven't done so. So make sure you put that on your list to get done in the next week or so. And then that's all I have on my presentation. I'll turn it over to Bryce if there's no questions.
All right, well, I gotta say on our screen where we can see one of the ESUs where it looks like it's a watch party for this exciting information. And I think we must be doing all right since it doesn't look like any card games have broken out in that ESU, or maybe they're watching a different movie on the screen and we can't tell. I'm not sure, but we'll take it as a good sign one way or another. I'm going to go over just quickly a couple of bills that were passed during the 2025 legislative session. Kind of as Jeff Schreier said earlier from the auditor's office, the good news is not a lot was done on the school finance side of things during this session. Go ahead and hit the next slide for me. The ones that I do want to hit, LB 264 had language in there that changes the special education reimbursement. And really what I want to just stress here is you should still be receiving approximately 80% of your special education school age expenditures reimbursed by the state. That was to fix a technical issue with how that original language was written, and the guy who helped put that language, which was me, didn't do a very good job, and resulted in an audit finding for us. So it was fixing a technical issue there. Again, just want to reiterate that schools should still see around 80%. It might be right above, right below, because we're having to do a little bit of averaging there, but it'll be really close to 80%. So that's LB 264. LB 303 creates the School Finance Review Commission. There's a lot with this one that's yet to be determined, and how that's going to go. But we do know that we are required to meet, that committee or the commission is required to meet quarterly. The commissioner will be heading that up. And we will be, myself and Teresa Harburg, our school finance research specialist, and Michelle will be very involved with that committee as well and helping out and providing information for them. I don't know what direction they'll go yet. It'll be interesting to see. In that bill as well, there was kind of a fix for the following bill, LB 645, that changed the retirement contribution percentage. People are pretty aware of that bill at this point. We've hit on it a couple times already, but LB 303 allowed for the retirement exclusion to be kind of a twofold process now, where we have the difference between the 8.08 for this upcoming year and the 7.35%, but also for 2 years, it includes the amount for what you requested last year, essentially as an exclusion in addition to that amount. So those two bills are kind of working together as far as the retirement exclusion and how that applies to your budget. And then LB 306 is a bill that requires the Department of Administrative Services to report information from the school district audits. So I'm just gonna be direct and say it's kind of, in my opinion, a silly bill, because most of the information is already available on our website. All of the income statement type of information from the audit is available. And the cash balances at the end of the year are available on our website. What they're adding to it essentially is the balance sheet information off of the audits. I don't know what that's gonna look like yet. I have a meeting with the Department of Administrative Services. I'm assuming they're gonna be asking for help with that, but not, I guess. It'll be interesting. That's their problem, not ours. But it will become probably a little bit of school districts and the auditor's office problems too, because I think somehow they're gonna have to have a system to upload that information, is what I'm assuming. So more to be found. Well, I'll probably know more about that later this summer and can pass that along. Probably one of the biggest things that is kind of coming to light right now, and Jeff talked about this just a little bit earlier, but what I want to draw attention to on the school tax credits is just a quick reminder that that's what replaces the old income tax statement credits that individuals got. Now they're getting that on the front end as a school tax credit. So what's happening is schools are being paid 2 payments from the state instead of getting payments from taxpayers when they're paying their payments. The situation that I want to make sure that you're aware of and what that's causing is a situation where school districts are going to have a one-time situation because of the timing of that, where you're going to have higher revenues in your 24-25 fiscal year than you would normally have, because those payments from the state, half of that payment is coming earlier than you would typically get your property tax payments. That's also going to mean that your ending balance in August for your cash balances are going to be higher than you would usually see. Both of those things likely to catch attention from legislature or patrons in your district who are watching that. So you need to be prepared to explain that, because what's going to then follow is September, October, your tax draws are going to be lower than they historically have been, or what you would normally anticipate them being, because of the state making those payments. So just to give an example, what that looks like, I think may help people understand what's going on and how to explain it maybe to your board or to others, is if we use the example of if you asked for $1 million, if I was a taxpayer in your district and I had to pay 100,000, my tax bill was 100,000 historically, I would have paid roughly 500,000 of that in April, and the other 500,000 you as the school district would get in September, the following fiscal year, right? Well, now what's happening with this school tax credit is, instead of me paying 100,000, and I think I said I changed the numbers, 100,000, paying 50,000 and 50,000. So instead of doing that now, I'm only having to pay 60,000. So I'm going to pay 30,000 in April. I'm going to pay my other 30,000 so that the school district receives it in September, the following fiscal year, right? So that part's still going to be the same as it always has been. But the other 40,000 now is being paid by the state. And instead of you getting 20 of that in April and 20 of it in September, you're getting the full 40,000 in January and April. So you're getting more revenue up front, but you're not gonna get that additional 20,000 from me or the state in September, October. It's a timing issue. And it's just this first year. So next year, you're gonna see your cash balances. What you gotta be prepared to explain to your board is, yes, we have higher cash balances right now. Most of you probably have seen that's been way higher than what you typically would have or what you were anticipating for this year. But September, October cash property tax draws are gonna be down. So you have to be prepared for that. Hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully I want to make sure that schools are prepared to explain that to possibly your senator, your school boards, other patrons that may catch wind of higher revenues this year and higher cash balances at the end of August. We'll do our part here to try and make sure that people over at the legislature understand that as well. I did want to hit property tax authority. I know this is probably getting to the point where we're about the end having to explain this a lot, but we do still get a lot of questions on it. And I think it's important to just hit it a little bit more. It is now the third mechanism for limiting school district taxation. And quite honestly, it's probably the one that hits more school districts than anything else. So it is critical. Stephanie already mentioned it's general fund and special building fund only. The key to it is really, you have to think about it as it's really not so much a property tax cap, it's a revenue cap. They call it property tax authority, but it's really a revenue authority or revenue cap because it allows your revenue to grow by 3% plus those other factors that are on that slide every year. And then we back into how much property tax authority you have. So go ahead and hit the next slide for me. So Michelle did a great job of creating this document. I think when we had a note earlier that it's really helped people explain it to their boards better. I think it is a little easier to follow, but we start out with what their base amount is. We determine what that growth is, and you set your new revenue cap. That new revenue cap, then we start there and back out all those other revenue sources that were required to recognize in the statute. What's left is your new property tax authority. We then say, okay, that's what your authority is, unless your board authorizes the additional percentage, here's what that is. And the total amount that you could access without going to the vote of your public is at the very bottom line. That's with your board approval. So what you got to keep in mind is those are the numbers you're working with special building fund and with your general fund. If you have unused authority rolling over, that's added in there as well. That's included. If it's unused, it doesn't have the growth factor on it. That 3% plus those other factors is not in the unused portion, but it does roll forward from year to year. That's a piece that's been very thoroughly examined by the legislature in the last couple of years and is going to probably continue to be watched closely in the next few years as well. So hit the next slide. I just, again, I know we went through this, but I want to just draw attention to three things that politically, I'm just talking about the politics behind it, are really key. And what they watch closely is, one, did your board approve the additional authority? And what amount did they approve? Was it the full amount? The board's not required to approve the full amount, but they can. Two, how much unused property tax request authority does your district have? They're very interested in that number. So I just want you all to be prepared to explain why your district situation is what it is. That's, I guess, what I'm drawing attention to. And then that last one, and this was one of the questions that came in that I wanted to hit here, is how much was your property tax request reduced because of the increased special education funding and the foundation aid? Again, probably, in my opinion, a silly piece to this legislation when it passed 2 years ago is because it's not going to make a lot of sense to people going forward in future years. But what I would do, or what I continue to recommend, is if I was at a district and completing this
information, I would just quickly and easily just take half of my special education reimbursement that I'm anticipating this upcoming year. So I'd look at my special education expenditures for the past year. I'd take half of that special, what's the state's gonna reimburse me or estimate what that is. I'd take that amount plus the foundation aid that Michelle certified to us in our TIOSA state aid certification. I'd add those two amounts together and I'd put that in D310 if I was a non-equalized district. If I'm an equalized district, I'm gonna take half of my special education reimbursement from the state, and I'm gonna take the 40% foundation aid that's outside of the equalization calculation. Those two things is what I'm gonna enter in that D310. So it's there, it's not a number that anybody can verify or vouch, and so you can't be wrong in that number. As far as somebody saying, well, that you didn't do that. You might be wrong in it politically if you put 0 in there. And just have to answer that question to senators. So we have historically called school districts that have a 0 in there and say, hey, are you sure you want to do that? You can. And maybe that's accurate. We've had some school districts leave that. That's allowed. But you better be prepared to answer why.
And for clarification, the system will allow you to enter 0, but we're making you enter that 0 so we know that's what you wanted to enter before you even hit submit on the LC2.
One more time here on this one too. I'll probably leave this one alone after this summer. But again, just a lot of confusion around the property tax authority certification and joint public hearings. So they are not the same. Those thresholds are different thresholds. They do impact each other. Specifically, property tax authority and what you're allowed to ask for in property taxes may impact your joint public hearing, but they are not one and of the same. They are different. So don't get them confused. What I would tell you is it's very likely, your property tax authority may go way up. And that's a factor of your state aid going way down. So you have to ask for more property taxes. That may make your property tax request go up by more than that 2% plus real growth and make you be a part of that joint public hearing. Vice versa, if your state aid goes way up and your property tax authority goes way down, you may not be allowed to ask for enough taxes to even be a part of that joint public hearing. So they intersect, but they're not the same. Just because if you're trying to keep your property, you're trying to stay under that joint public hearing threshold, you may end up with a whole lot of unused property tax authority if you do that. I will tell you, in working and looking at a lot of budgets and talking to a lot of you over the last 2 years, joint public hearing is probably the best deterrent for property tax requests that I've seen, because there's been a lot of school districts that have said, I don't want to be a part of that hearing. I'm going to keep my tax request down. I think what happens then is you got to be careful that you're not putting your school district in a bad situation by not doing that. And that might be the right answer for your school district a year or 2 years. But I think you get to a point where you may have to, because other factors like state aid, special education reimbursement, something like that changed, or you're just have a building project and you have to go take care of HVAC or roof replacement, and you got to up your tax request. And so you may have to go over it. And some schools, I think, have taken the approach of, well, once we have to go be part of that joint public hearing, we're going to go get enough that we don't have to go be part of that joint public hearing again for a couple of years. So all things that you're thinking through when you're putting your budget together. Census count collection here, not a lot different on this. The only thing I really want to draw attention to is, so there's been a few questions too. Why are we asking for more documentation on things this year? Well, our state auditors are really digging into everything right now and have had findings about us not checking data. So we are pretty much required to go out there and find additional data on the census collection. Since we use that information to pass out apportionment funds, they're asking for us to check supporting documentation there. That means that we now are requesting supporting documentation on that collection. That's going to be things like your exempt school handout that you printed out. If you have exempt school students in your district,
that you're using for support. If it's private school students, and you have a roll of students from that private school that live in your district and you're including them in your census count, since it's based on who lives in your district and your own membership information. Those are things that we're expecting to see in that upload. We know that districts do their census collection a lot different. I've talked to a lot of school districts about, okay, what are you using to complete this? Whatever it is, just include it as your support in that collection. We're gonna probably have to work through what that looks like a little bit in years going forward, but that's where we're at with it right now. Just real quick, the the ESEA team asked me to cover a couple things related to the federal grants. We have preliminary amounts for all but the Title I-C, but no finals have been provided yet. So as soon as that information is available, we'll be getting that out to you guys. Obviously, at the federal level, there's a lot of unknowns. And everything seems to be changing pretty rapidly. So that's something we're just keeping a close eye on and passing information along as we have it. What I would tell you then about that team is, as you're completing those applications for those federal grants, work closely with that team. That's a great team. They do a good job of being supportive. One of the things we started last year that's really seemed to go well and be very helpful, especially if I have new soups or business managers on this webinar today, is they're showing up with us at our new soup orientation, which I have a couple slides on, or a slide on later, but in a second. But they're showing up out there with us, and we'll be there all afternoon to help you with your title applications and all of your federal program grants. So they can walk you through that, as well as all the other financial stuff we'll be out there helping you with. And they have room right next to our rowdy fun room at admin days, helping you with those. So make sure you take advantage of their team. They're a good group. Go ahead and hit the next one. Just a reminder here, they just noted one of the issues that's popped up. If you have paraprofessionals working in Title I school-wide building, they have to be qualified prior to working with students. So the qualifications are listed there. I won't go through those. But one of the things that's new is the time and effort calculation sheets are now available on our NDE website. They feel like they're very helpful. So use those.
Awesome.
Awesome is the word. And then just kind of a helpful thing, when you have federal grants, make sure you're coding expenditures up to the amount or just barely over the amount of your federal grant each year, and coding the rest into your local codes. Sometimes we often see schools code a full, if they have an example they're using there is that they're using Title I funds to pay for a salary and benefits of a staff member, they'll code the entire staff member to that Title I. Well, if the grant only covers 59,000 of that, you're losing reimbursement from the state as part of TIOSA. And other school districts are as well, because we do the averaging in TIOSA, by not coding the additional funds, the amount over 59,000 into the local expenditure code. So make sure that you're not coding too much to those federal expenditures, but you want to use the full amount so you can get your reimbursement. And just a reminder on the GMS landing page, each of your grants, if you have questions as you're completing your applications, we have a link on there that will get you right to the staff you need to get to answer questions related to that grant. And then one of the key here, reimbursement requests. We've said this for a long time. Don't wait and do your full reimbursement request at the end of the grant cycle. I know a lot of districts do that, and it may be easier for you. But it's really helpful for us to get things out and moving faster if you do it somewhat regularly throughout the year. But what I really want to note here, we have historically done extensions on federal grants, and allowed for a further liquidation period when that was available. We're not going to be doing that anymore. So this is kind of a policy change. We're going to stick to those federal grants. We're finding issues. I think the ESSER funds and the problem we have with getting those reimbursed by the feds have just highlighted an issue with that. It's caused other administrative issues as well. So if you're not sure how to spend your federal funds,
during the grant window, reach out to that team and have them help you during the grant period. Don't expect that you're gonna have extensions going forward. The exempt school system is up and running for this year. Just the quick thing here for all of you in the public schools is your reports will be available in August. Don't anticipate any glitches with that, so you should be able to check and see what students have filed for exempt status and won't be attending your school, so you know whether they're delinquent or not. Fiscal monitoring, one of the big changes that's all going to be done through the GMS system beginning July 10th. I know that Tom and their team that do the fiscal monitoring are going to be having a webinar and having some training on what that's going to look like. But when they come out and do their fiscal monitoring, this is part of, we've gotten sped up significantly in how fast we're getting reimbursements out of school districts. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is we have to do the fiscal monitoring on the back end per the federal requirements and how that process has changed. And so when they come out and do fiscal monitoring, they're doing that on all of the grants. And so that will all be kept in the GMS system so that the state auditors or any other auditors that are coming in here going forward won't have to come back and bug you. They won't have to bug us. We can just give them access to the GMS system and all that information will be there. The most common errors, these tend to be the same. Time and effort logs are and have been the biggest issue. Make sure that you're doing those appropriately. You have questions, Tom Geschel is a good resource to reach out to on that. Also policy and procedures manuals. Those two things have come up every single year and continue to be the biggest areas of concern when we're talking about grants and having the required documentation. And then the other big thing, once you've gotten reimbursement from a grant, you can't go in and do an amendment and move those funds out or change the coding into somewhere else. That causes those funds to be unallowable and could result in you having to pay them back. Also findings being had on your audits and ours. Okay. Before I jump into this slide, just a couple of things I want to note, just kind of the here's and there's types of things. So we noted earlier in the presentation that there's a lot of amendments being done because of the career technical education state funds now being in for year one and people didn't code them into the state fund account. Also, we know, and I know we've reached out to you on that. The other thing is there were not many schools districts that had requested reimbursement for the current year funds. So the amendments were due to last year's funds, but current year funds have to be spent and requested before June 30th. If you haven't done that for the current year, please do that as soon as possible. We want to make sure that those funds don't go back to the state and that schools are using those funds. They're relatively easy to find uses for. So reach out to Katie Graham, Sydney Kobza, and they can help you with that if you haven't done that yet. And then one other thing, probably saw in the news a month or two ago that the auditor's office did a whole big dig into superintendent compensation. They found that some things weren't coded correctly. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't redo and go through that again this upcoming year. Just make sure that you're coding any superintendent compensation to the correct account codes so it doesn't show up in their audit and report as well again this next year. And then the last kind of this and that, I guess, situations, I wanted to reiterate with the van situation that is driven by federal requirements. We absolutely understand how big of a deal that is to school districts. We understand that there's a lot of efficiencies that are going to be lost for school districts and reducing the size of the vans. It's unfortunate as far as it goes efficiently for school districts to have to deal with that change. Nebraska was one of the few states to hang on to those 11 passenger vans as long as we did. I know there's going to be issues with that. And I just want to reiterate, we know that that's unfortunate and it's not helpful to what school districts are trying to do, especially when we talk about bus driver shortages and everything else you have to deal with and trying to put kids and coaches to activities. So we understand it's unfortunately mostly out of our hands. But there will be communication and that will work through the whole rule revision process. The rule revision process rarely takes less than a year to go to completion by the time the governor does his review and sign off. So we're gonna have some time to work through that. We have just been over the last couple of years relaying the information that's coming to us from the feds. We had a feeling the information coming from the feds is pointing this direction, and that's what we've been trying to relay for the last couple of years, so that you weren't just caught off guard today when we said, hey, this change is occurring. So it's caused a lot of consternation, a lot of conversations over the last 2 years already. That was us trying to give you a heads up of what we thought was maybe coming. Stephanie then said, yep, confirmed. When we went to that Congress, it says what happened. And so that's where we're at. I just wanted to, again, reiterate, it's the feds that are driving this change. So with that said, I'm gonna jump back into last couple of things, just finance related. Administrator days, as we have been since as long as I know, we'll be out at administrator days. Michelle and I get to do a school finance presentation right after the commissioner. So we'll be there talking about anything that's new and upcoming that you need to know. We're also doing budget assistance upstairs like we've done in the past. We'll be there both Wednesday and Thursday of administrator days. If you're new, make sure you're bringing your audit, bring last year's budget. It's really helpful if you can get a start on some of this stuff, but if you can't, that's okay too. Come to the new soup orientation. You can hit the next thing there. And we will help you get started on that. If you're new and you have no idea where to start, we're glad to help you walk through. We might give you homework to do from new soup orientation. Come back and see us at admin days. We'll be there doing both. So as we've done in the past here as well, we'll be out in North Platte at ESU 16 on July 15th. The morning of new soup orientation is classroom style. We'll talk to you about all the things you need to know school finance related right away as a new superintendent. If you're returning, usually it's first and second year, but we have people that come and find it helpful. You're always welcome to join us. Some really good conversations happen there, especially with some of the veterans. So don't feel out of place. Then all afternoon, we're just there to work with you, help you on your budgets, answer state aid questions, whatever property tax store, whatever it is. We'll be there. Again, the ESEA team will be there. We're in Lincoln in the state boardroom on July 17th. So that's the week before admin days that we do those two new soup orientations. The North Platte one is only in person. The July 17th one in the state boardroom. We will have a Zoom available. Highly recommend you come in person for those, but it is an option. We'll try to record that and make that available later. So that go on. And then just as far as budgets go, always recommend, even for the veterans, send your budget into one of the four of us. Even if you know what you're doing, it's pretty rare that we can't find something that maybe just needs to be tweaked or updated. Not that we're trying to do that, but it's just, we look at a lot of them and have a lot of experience with it. So it's good to get another set of eyes on them. You can email them in, you can set an appointment. We'll be glad to do that with you at any time. And any other way, Zoom meeting, in person, whatever it is that works for you, we'll make it work for us. So that's what I'd say. Our school finance team's there. And then I would just say, is there any questions for us that we can answer before we jump off and end the call? So I would say at this time, feel free, if you want to unmute and ask a question, you can do that. You can type it into the chat. We'll stay on for a few minutes and see if there's any questions.
Did you see my text?
All right, we're not getting any questions, so I think we're gonna call it meeting. Thank you all.